Welcome to class, everyone. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here for today's explainer because we are tackling what I honestly consider one of the most fascinating quirks in human behavior. So, picture this. You're walking down the street and you see a dog. You don't know this dog. You have literally zero shared history. And yet, somewhere deep inside you, this primal force wakes up. Before you've even fully processed what's happening, you're crouched on the pavement, whispering baby talk to a total stranger's golden retriever. Today, we're going to examine this phenomenon, but not as some quirky personality trait. We're looking at it as a cross-cultural, deeply neurological imperative. All right, let's dive into the biology of the human petting instinct. Here is a quick look at our syllabus for today's explainer. We'll kick things off with the universal instinct, then move into hijacking caregiving circuitry, the chemistry of social touch, understanding cute aggression, our coevolutionary history, and finally, the biology of deprivation. Let's get right into it.
Starting off with Section 1, the universal instinct.
Now, it's really easy to just shrug and say, well, animals are cute, so we pet them. But hey, this is a biology class, and that just isn't a robust enough answer for us. We need to frame this overwhelming urge to touch a fluffy coat as a hardwired biological imperative, one that actually operates way faster than our conscious minds. What's truly fascinating is the sequence of events firing off in your nervous system. Think about the timeline here. When your brain identifies something as potentially rewarding, like a soft, warm animal, it creates an intense motivational pull. Your approach motivation actually outpaces your conscious thought. Your reward circuitry is quite literally moving your hand to pet that dog before the conscious decision-making layer of your brain even realizes what's going on. You aren't consciously deciding to pet the dog. Your body just started doing it on its own.
That brings us to Section 2, hijacking caregiving circuitry.
So, how exactly does a simple visual input, just casually looking at an animal, kick off this massive subconscious cascade of caregiving responses? Well, to answer that, we actually have to jump back to 1943. Austrian ethnologist Konrad Lorenz proposed this brilliant idea called the Kindchen schema, or baby schema. He figured out that certain physical traits, round faces, big eyes, small chins, really soft features, evolved in human infants specifically to hijack adult brains. Basically, evolution built a visual exploit right into our neurological operating system to make absolutely sure we nurture our young. But here's the kicker. Our brains don't run a species check. When an animal rocks those exact same features, it exploits that exact same vulnerability in our programming. It instantly triggers fierce protective instincts for a creature we literally met about 11 seconds ago.
And decades later, modern fMRI scans prove Lorenz was totally right. When you look at a cute baby animal, your orbitofrontal cortex, reward processing areas, and motivation centers absolutely light up. Viewing a cute animal is not a passive experience at all. It's a highly active neurological event. Your brain is reacting strongly to something it deems emotionally significant and ultimately worth caring about.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 3, the chemistry of social touch.
Let's try a little Socratic question for the class here. We've mapped out the visual triggers, sure, but why do we crave the tactile experience of soft fur? Why don't we feel an irresistible burning urge to gently stroke a brick wall or a pile of gravel? The answer comes down to C-tactile afference. To de-jargonize that a bit, the human sense of touch isn't just one giant monolithic thing. Your skin is actually covered in specialized sensory cells. C-tactile afferents are specific nerve fibers perfectly wired to make gentle touch feel emotionally meaningful. They completely bypass the standard sensory processing pathways and send signals directly to the emotion and social bonding centers of your brain.
But the absolute most crucial detail here is the precision required to activate them. These specific fibers are tuned almost perfectly to a very distinct kind of touch, slow, gentle, soft stroking at a speed of exactly 1 to 10 centimeters per second. Think about that. The texture, the warmth, the consistent pressure of running your hands over soft fur. It's honestly as if animal fur was perfectly engineered to interface with this exact human sensory system.
And when you successfully trigger this pathway, you get a rush of chemistry, specifically oxytocin, which you've probably heard called the love hormone. Multiple clinical studies show that just a few minutes of petting a dog causes measurable spikes in the blood concentration of this bonding hormone in humans. But honestly, the most wholesome, fascinating part of all of this, the chemistry is bidirectional.
The dog is experiencing the exact same simultaneous chemical spike. You and the dog are sharing the identical neurochemical response that bonds human parents to their children. You are, biologically speaking, falling a little bit in love with each other.
And hey, it's not just touch, it's sound too. If you are petting a cat, for instance, you're likely hearing it purr. A cat's larynx vibrates to produce a frequency between 25 and 150 hertz. Why does that matter? Because clinical studies actually show that frequencies in this specific range actively promote bone healing, reduce inflammation, and accelerate recovery in soft tissue injuries. When a cat is just chilling on your chest and purring, you aren't just hearing a cute noise. You are quite literally receiving passive accidental physical therapy that your body biologically craves. How amazing is that?
Moving right along to Section 4, Understanding Cute Aggression.
So we need to shift our focus to the slightly darker, slightly more compulsive side of this biological equation. Why do we sometimes look at an adorable puppy and feel this totally unhinged urge to aggressively squeeze it? Well, science calls this cute aggression. According to some fantastic research out of Yale, it is actually a perfectly normal homeostatic regulatory response. Basically, when your brain is overwhelmed by a massively positive emotional stimulus, like looking at a ridiculously cute kitten, it essentially short-circuits. To cope with that system overload, the brain generates a countervailing negative impulse to balance the scales. So if you've ever had the sudden urge to playfully squish a cute animal, don't worry, it just means your nervous system is working perfectly to regulate itself.
This actually brings up a fantastic question for our class to consider. Are humans the only species that experience this intense pull toward other species? Is this purely a human phenomenon?
The empirical evidence gives us a resounding no. The need for touch is ancient, and it runs so deep through the entire animal kingdom. Capuchin monkeys gently handle small animals. Bonobos actively engage in cross-species play in the wild. And perhaps the most profound example is Coco the gorilla. Coco famously learned sign language, and she actually requested and raised multiple pet cats over her lifetime. When one of her cats passed away, she expressed genuine, measurable grief. She bonded with a smaller, warm, fuzzy creature because touch meant something deeply real to her, just like it does to us.
Let's zoom out to the macro scale for Section 5, Human and Dog Co-Evolution.
You see, the relationship we have with animals, particularly dogs, is absolutely not a coincidence. It is a deep, historical narrative of mutual biological engineering. We are looking at an immense timeline here, spanning anywhere from 15,000 to 40,000 years of genuine mutual adaptation. Humans and dogs have lived, worked, slept near, and touched each other for so long that we have measurably and physically changed one another over millennia.
And you can see this clear as day when you contrast modern dogs with wild wolves. Even if a wolf is raised by humans from birth, they remain functionally and neurologically distinct. Dogs will spontaneously track human pointing and follow our eye gaze. But more importantly, dogs make eye contact with us in a way that directly triggers that powerful oxytocin loop we discussed earlier. They participate dynamically in our social cues in ways their wild ancestors simply cannot.
This brilliantly illustrates just how deep this coevolution goes. Dogs literally evolved a brand new anatomical structure, the levator anguli oculi medialis. That's a highly specific facial muscle virtually absent in wolves, and its sole purpose? To produce the classic puppy dog eyes expression. This represents tens of thousands of years of deliberate social engineering. Dogs evolved a muscle specifically to manipulate human emotions, basically encouraging us to nurture, feed, and touch them. We didn't just domesticate dogs, folks, we domesticated each other.
Which leads us to our final clinical reality in Section 6, the biology of touch deprivation.
We've seen how deeply integrated this need for animal touch is into our biology. So what happens to the mammalian nervous system when that touch is entirely removed? Well, the clinical data is pretty striking. Touch deprivation is a massive physiological stressor. During periods of isolation, people with pets consistently show better mental health outcomes, a lower baseline of cortisol, which is our primary stress hormone, and lower rates of depression and anxiety. Researchers continually emphasize that it's not just abstract emotional companionship, it's the physical contact, the warm weight of a body that acts as a completely necessary physiological stress reliever.
We see this incredibly rapid medical efficacy in animal-assisted therapy all the time. In hospital environments, just having a therapy dog present significantly reduces perceived pain and lowers anxiety before major medical procedures. And look at the timeline on this. It takes only 10 to 15 minutes of interacting with and touching an animal to statistically alter cortisol and oxytocin levels in the human body. Your nervous system is incredibly fast at recognizing when it's getting exactly what it needs to survive.
So, if you take nothing else away from our explainer today, remember this core thesis.
Touch is how mammals communicate safety. For the vast, overwhelming majority of human history, our nervous systems expected constant physical proximity to animals. The modern sterile separation between humans and the natural world is, in evolutionary terms, an incredibly recent and massive shock. Our brains haven't caught up yet. They are still desperately expecting to be near warm, soft, living things.
I want to leave the class with this final provocative thought. If our nervous system spent 40,000 years adapting to quite literally require animal touch to regulate our stress and bond with the world, what happens to human health as we increasingly isolate ourselves from the natural world? The next time you find yourself crouching on the pavement to pet a stranger's dog, just remember, it's not just a cute quirk. It is an ancient biological necessity. Thank you all so much for joining me for this explainer. Class dismissed. Keep exploring and keep learning.